And for now, I'd like to really give a big, a beautiful, a warm welcome to my dearest, dearest brother, Robin, who I haven't seen in a long time and I haven't spoken to in a long time. And I feel very honored to have this conversation with my brother, Robin. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Before we begin, I just want to kind of ground and anchor my energy field. So just about a minute of silence and just opening up the container. So those of you watching, you're welcome to drop into your breath as this will be the subject matter. Kundiana yete yete ye 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 kia katara juyu yetia ye siutuara e kia tara katara katara shuku yantia tara hyokotiati. Everybody taking a big, beautiful breath in. And let's get ready to rumble. Robin, welcome to Delicately Wild. Robin is a dear friend of mine. I did my Breathwork practitioner's course with him in, I think it was 2019. So quite some time ago. He is the founder and owner of Breathwave and many, many other attributes to this elder. You're on mute, by the way, Robin. I'll just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Thank you, oh great spirit, my mother's grandfathers. Thanks for my dear sister here, Brigitte. This opportunity to share our hearts today, inviting us all into this presence with breath and prayer and conversation of life and what's moving at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my voice, Robin speaking. Feeling really grateful for this opportunity to drop in today. Yeah, if it feels appropriate to you, I'd like to open with an offering to Tonantzin, Mother Earth.
Yeah, of course.
The drum doesn't always come through
Yeah.
in this portal.
We'll ask for the gateways to open. A beautiful harmonic transmission, yeah.
Tonantzin, yo te canto. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Que te quiero tanto, tanto. Tú estás Iana, hey, hey, en mi corazón, Iana, hey, hey. y te cantaré, y te cantaré, y te cantaré, y te cantaré, Yana, hey, hey, oh, hey. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Tonantzin, yo te canto. Que te quiero tanto, tanto. Tú estás y Ana, hey, hey, ay, en mi corazón y Ana, hey, hey. Y te cantaré, y te cantaré, y te cantaré, y Ana, hey, hey, oh, hey.
Thank you, brother. That was beautiful. There's so much energy moving through me. I don't know if you can feel it as well. Yeah.
Mm,
Let us begin, I guess. I've mentioned you as founder of Breathwave, and I've been working with this medicine for quite some time now, and I just want to, I guess, give my absolute gratitude for this modality, for that which is free, that which resides within us, that which is right under our nose, and this gift of breath that we can really share with anyone, any age, any culture, anywhere, and you're so dirty. It's
mm,
just so accessible and it's so powerful, and there are so many different modalities. So I guess we'll begin with walking us through the specifics of breath wave.
mm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, really giving thanks for the breath being the greatest medicine in my life. As we arrive here from this cosmic flesh into this life and with a whole long line of ancestral lineage, we carry the memory in our blood of all that we've been through since before the beginning. And I grew up in a home with a loving family and a father that had some military training, and my great grandfather through both world wars, and there was a quality of noticing that he had lost his voice. My father had lost his voice as a
Mhm.
young man because of that nature of the authority. And through my experience, I also lost my voice because he needed to be heard.
Mm.
And so it took me many years to find the medicine of peeling the layers open of my heart. And the breath really is just so precise in how it touches us
Mm.
because it brings us back to the present and it brings us back to our feeling nature.
Yeah.
And the feminine quality that has really evolved through us as this medicine has evolved in the West since it landed in the 60s from Babaji through Leonard Orr and became rebirthing. Through us as Breathwave, as a global tribe now, has really softened. And the
Yeah.
main quality that makes Breathwave unique is the gentleness.
Yes.
That deep listening. Because in the
Yeah.
West we have a tendency to strive
Yeah.
for the next peak experience
Of
and to get
course.
happening as quickly as we can, and we have a goal oriented approach to our spirituality. And yet when we settle in to this present moment, there is a connectivity, with self as the universe that invites us to open and receive and to relax and let go. And
Yeah.
we've learned a lot about the nervous system and the influence of the breath on the nervous system, the brain, and all the systems. And especially the cardiovascular system, fast the lymphatic system, the waters in the body, and
Mm.
our ability to feel life
Yes.
as it is,
Yeah.
and to carry through our gifts, because where our deepest pain is right there, we wrestle our
Yeah.
shame and our heaviness and the darkness into polishing our gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this gentleness is really the key quality to regulating the nervous system. And we learned that the vagus nerve is rooted in the gut,
Mm.
in the base of the belly below the navel, which in many forms of martial arts, that's the center of balance and the main central battery in the body. And traditionally, rebirthing was very upper respiratory.
Yeah.
You know, there was an approach to it where we could get fully activated and get into emotional catharsis and heal our birth trauma. But
Mm.
that's not the only trauma that we carry. And so
Correct.
breath work is shadow work.
Yes.
And in order for us to fully integrate and have a full medicine wheel of integration in the brain and the nervous system, there needs to be relaxation.
Yes.
And
And safety.
uh-huh, this
Yeah.
quality of softening, but also breathing and receiving from the belly where the vagus nerve is rooted is what establishes safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it hasn't been comfortable for us to be here on this planet
Yeah.
with everything that's been going on. And things, as we all know, are speeding up. And there's an awakening that's obvious now, where people that even aren't committed to personal practice are noticing something's not feeling right in me. I'm not well, and I want to know more about how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And the breath is just so fundamental that it's right under our nose, yet it's so easily overlooked because
Yeah. Hiding in plain sight, right?
right, because it's so simple.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
obvious. Yeah.
And yet we love to complicate things because we grow up and we learn, overstimulation,
Yeah.
and to just settle and simplify. It connects us with life, with the trees, with the winds, with the ways that the waters move, with the fire.
Mm.
And the fire is mostly silent. That
Mm.
great power that we are is very humble, quiet.
Mm. Mm.
And so I've come to learn that the more that we experience and learn, the more humble we get.
Yes.
And breath has really brought me home to this humility because, I just needed to survive as a young man, and I needed to prove myself in order to be seen and accepted by my peers. And, in the west coast of Canada, we were given drugs and alcohol
Yeah.
as ways to manage and numb the heaviness of the intensity of our home experience and what our parents went through and how they were doing their best with what they had.
Yeah.
And so I found psychedelics at a young age in my teens and started eating LSD and mushrooms with my friends and expanding my consciousness in a very potent way
Yeah.
without knowing what we were doing. Just
Of
we had access
course.
to it, and thankfully, I found the good medicines, and I saw that there was these man-made maldiciones, the curses of like the coca leaf and how cocaine
Mm.
was a part of the environment, and some of those things just didn't resonate. I noticed how sketchy, friends and were when they were on that in that
Yeah.
energy. And yet
Yeah.
we expanded our consciousness and integrated our emotions, and we dropped
And
in together.
connected with God.
We became God through
Yeah.
those openings of that potency of plant medicine's purpose. and partly, LSD and mushrooms have been rippling, for a long, long time
Yeah.
as a tool for our awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was doing some deep inner work and emotional work, and also, found punk rock and that tribal nature of our culture to express and liberate ourselves through our brotherhood, through our
Yeah.
sisterhood, through our tribal nature.
Yeah.
And when I finally went to the other side of the world to learn how to surf, I met the dolphins, and I had a very profound interaction with some dolphins in the wild. And I was in tears for days
Wow.
of that safety and playfulness that they revealed
Yeah.
to a surfer friend and myself on our own. And that really brought me home to the ocean because I grew up in the mountains in the interior of British Columbia.
Okay.
Returning to Canada, I was drawn to go back to the ocean and prepared a safari with some friends to surf Baja, Mexico, and that's where I landed on my feet and found some of my teachers, and I found the sweat lodge, the ceremonial web of life of
Yeah.
resonating with a way of following guidance on how to move around the circle, and how to respectfully offer ourselves up to something greater. That really resonated with me. I found my home, and I was still quite lost and angry, when I arrived there, and slowly those teachings started to arrive, and I landed with a beautiful chiropractor teacher that took me under his wing, and he initially gave me breathwork, and it wasn't very long for me to find transformational breath. And I invited Judith Kravitz, the founder of transformational breathing, to come down to that community. And she ended up coming frequently, a couple of times a year for several years, and I
Mm.
became a senior trainer at the foundation.
Mm.
And so it's evolved a lot even since that offering. Judith basically took rebirthing, healed herself of throat cancer, and she was bringing sound healing, voice work,
Yeah.
and a much more well-rounded approach to correcting people's breathing patterns. And
Mm.
as more and more students come to our training from other schools of breath training, I'm noticing that there's a uniqueness to Breathwave that comes from transformational breath, of how to be very curious about the subtleties of the qualities and nuances of how we breathe is how we live.
Yeah.
Our patterns of resistance show up when we open into our emotional nature. And
Yeah.
this is what we come up against on the spiritual path, is our own resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the way we train facilitators now is to notice, as a midwife, if you will, trusting in this universal source that's moving and breathing and guiding us, while also being honest with what we're seeing. If someone's getting in the way, if they're making things difficult for themselves because they're unconsciously choosing contraction and
Yeah.
resistance or avoidance.
Yeah.
And
And
so the
control.
ceremonial, yeah, the ceremonial background that I was given, which I didn't have the opportunity to experience here in Canada because the wounds are so fresh with the native people, that most of them, white people have just been coming to take from them
Yeah.
since we arrived. And there's a lot of fresh wounds from that
Yeah.
trauma. The residential schools continued into the 90s, and then there's still genocide happening today.
Yeah.
And so I've had the opportunity of arriving back in Canada, connecting with hereditary elders in the place where we call home now, the Kawatsan nation, and one of my elders from Mexico opened the doors for us to have the hereditary elders come and welcome him to do a peyote ceremony, and having that appreciation for opening to learn from the first peoples of where I was born has been a huge honor and blessing in my
Beautiful.
life. It's brought me full circle. And so one of the natures of Breathwave is really the ceremonial background that
Yes.
in me through the sweat lodge and the many plant medicine journeys that I've had the privilege of being a part of.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the ceremonial aspect because, for me, my decision to move into facilitation of breath was immediate. I had been working with the mycelial for, I don't know, six years at the time. And it was my first breath that I did, and I decided immediately afterwards that I wanted to do this. And upon searching, I could feel the energetic sort of imprint of the people that were, marketing certain courses and things, and having come from ceremonial work doing plant medicine, that ceremony aspect was really important for me. And it's what I speak about often in the marketing or conversations around the breath that I do, is that ceremonial aspect. It's not just a workshop, it's a sacred experience. And really linking this in. And I know you have, conversations about integration of plant medicine through breath work, and also preparation for deeper psychospiritual experiences through breath work. And I'm so grateful that I've done this because since having done the breath, it is an integral part of my sort of package with people, where we do not go into plant medicine space until we've all done a breath. And what's so fascinating is through the breathwork experience, that which people perceive to only be capable of experiencing on the medicine is already opened up in the breath. So what I've noticed is there's a lot of ancestral links that come through just in the breath work. So obviously, as the shaman, it's opening that portal space for the energetics and for the safety, etc., etc. But often the ancestors are already coming through in the breathwork space, and we haven't even taken the medicine, or we haven't taken the plant medicine yet. And I think this is so, so powerful and fascinating because it kind of allows people to just relax in the mushrooms. They've already greeted and met with their ancestral lineage often in the breath. And this is just like so, so powerful. And
Mm.
actually, to kind of update you, we haven't chatted in a long time, but I've kind of come completely out of the medicine serving space, where I really only want to work with people in that space until we've done some deep, 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 deep foundational work. And if there's no commitment there, and you're just looking for a quick ride and an easy trip into hyperdimensionalized space and the multiverse, well, you've got the wrong practitioner. And of course, um, this is plant medicine is quite a trend, and has become a trend. And I'm always in observation of that which is trending and asking why are things trending at the moment, and then turning around and kind of doing the opposite, so to speak. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I'd love
that,
to speak to that as I feel that there is this trend because it's so effective, you know,
yeah,
and it has its place in the medicine wheel of life, and that's why it's rippling and so easily sought after. The deep, strong plant teachers
mm,
are really good teachers, and there's so many beautiful medicine keepers and
mm,
traditions that are shared in integrity and authenticity with deep
mm,
deep training of individuals that have dedicated many years now to to deepening in themselves and the connection with the spirits of those plants and sharing those things in a good way.
Mm.
And what we love about the breath is that, plant medicine isn't for everyone.
Correct.
One of my brothers from Brazil says that we don't need ayahuasca. It's an opportunity. And yet we all need to breathe, right? It's the first ceremony
Correct.
and the last ceremony.
Yeah.
And we know that we can go days without food and water, but we can only go for 4 or 5 minutes or more without our breath.
Exactly.
So just to drop in and meet people where they're at in regards to what their prayer is and what they want to get out of the experience is really the first conversation
Yeah.
of what intention is. And do we want to just experience some physical healing because the breath is very good at that. It brings
Yeah.
us back to wholeness. It
Yeah.
activates our divine proportion of this toroidal field that's identical and interconnected with the electromagnetic field of the earth. We are
Yeah.
the conduit between the earth and the stars.
Mm.
And to open the breath, deepen cerebral spinal fluid, it starts to activate higher brain centers. We come more fully online. Things that have been stored in the back of the mind, in the limbic system of our more primordial survival nature, start to come into the forefront. We start to see things more clearly, and then the amount of healing that can take place can be very simple and very gentle, or we can move very effectively into the transpersonal domain of purging the subconscious of the
Yeah.
stories
Yeah.
that no longer serve us, that have been contributing to our suffering. And
Yeah.
so this is the deep medicine space that we hold in breath, of encouraging people to go there, that it's safe to go there, and
Yeah.
encourage some sound and expression through authenticity, and then coming back to a peaceful rhythm.
Yeah.
And life, like any plant medicine journey, has its waves of power, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really shows us who we are. And I think the fundamental existential fear that we all have, that we come up against at some point on the spiritual path, is the annihilation of our ego through our true power.
Yes.
And maybe that's our greatest fear, is that we are powerful beyond measure, and we are infinite.
Yes. I wanted to ask you in terms of, obviously we're moving through a massive consciousness shift on the planet. To some extent, we could call it, revelations, end times. And with that shift in consciousness, and of course, the electromagnetic field increasing and all darkness and shadow coming to the surface, along with that comes the activation of light within, because we have to, or we choose to, bring the lightness into this darkness. And through that, and through everything that is happening on a quantum level, as well as a historical level, from the perspective of the one, we are as individuals, all of us, and light workers. Let's speak specifically to light workers, because that's kind of who this show is directed to. But we are moving through massive shifts in our genetic capacity. Our DNA is activating in ways that are allowing us to remember our past, our history, our ancestry beyond blood lineage, but also cosmic and galactic lineage. And I know you've been working in this space for a very long time. You have so many beautiful, beautiful souls and strong facilitators and epic human beings coming through your space. My question is, have you noticed, or are you experiencing this sort of activation that is happening in, oh, we've lost Robin. I think I'm just going to pause there and see um, if he logs back in. Thank you for your patience, guys. Let me check on the Facebook stream. To those watching, thanks for your patience. Hey, brother. You might want to unmute yourself.
My
Perfect.
apologies.
No worries. Frequency is high. The imagery was just kind of blurring out there. I was like, we're gonna bust soon. I know it's But my question was, are you experiencing souls coming into your breathwork retreats at this point in time that are really activating the light body and coming into more cosmic experiences like light language, etc., etc.? I'm curious about that because I know you have quite a beautiful structure of level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. And of course, for me, my fascination has always been ascension. It has been creation mechanics. What is consciousness? How are we working with consciousness? How does that translate from higher dimensional aspects into energy, into material manifest form, from many different levels? And knowing that the DNA is activating to such a high level where we are gaining memories, and not only releasing trauma from this lifetime, but beginning to access and release trauma from lifetimes, from cosmic cycles. I'm curious if this is a beautiful
Yeah,
opening that is occurring in your facilitation retreats and the spaces.
thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this through. And what lands for me is, again, just bringing it back to simplicity because, we are cosmic and we are made of divine proportion and we are a result of a long ancestral lineage and a perfection of genetic coding, that is awakening at this time. We are the living prophecy. And I find that a lot of these concepts are a little challenging for some people to
Yes,
grasp because it's so the mind just can't comprehend
yes,
how vast and infinite and beautiful and perfect we are. And I love to just ground into the simplicity of helping people find some fundamental balance of being human.
yes,
It's not about being any more spiritual or cosmic because we're
yes,
already cosmically spiritual,
yes,
but really finding some fundamental healing and balance and a groundedness. So more
yeah.
than ascension, for me, it's about the descending grace.
Mm.
There's a lot of talk about
Or incension, yeah,
yeah, the ascension of
yeah,
and descending, actually coming down into the body because we
yes,
felt so unsafe here that we've wanted to vacate
yes,
and we wanted to escape. And so we have all of these tools that distract us from our feeling nature. And
yes,
the gift of breath really brings spirit into form. It's a fusion of our
yes,
nature into this finite and impermanent nature.
yes.
And to actually grieve, to actually feel
Hmm.
the heaviness of what our ancestors have been through so we could be here today is part of this light work that really is a
Shadow.
shadow work.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that because I mean, what is our goal ultimately through our spiritual inquiry is embodiment and to be perfectly angelic and perfectly human at one and at one-ment and at peace with that oneness. So that embodiment aspect and alongside the theme of the feminine style breath. And I really, really love this because we've been dictated through this patriarchal system for so long. And like you say, it's this the big kick, the crescendo of our spiritual peaks that we're seeking. And I guess many agendas within a facilitator's role, possibly to give someone, this fantastic experience, but it's really just slowing everything down. And
Thank you.
I love this. I love the feminine style because for me, when I teach, I really speak to the mastery that that brings. Um, I'm fascinated with self-mastery, that's my thing. And so I feel the feminine style breath has capacity to allow you to really experience mastery far more than a kind of faster rhythm masculine style peak breath experience. And that's what I love about the breath wave. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, as a gentleman, I'll speak to what I've seen in even ceremonial circles where it's been a very uh, masculine dominant and led space, right? Through India and the teachers and gurus that naturally are put on a pedestal.
Mm,
And what I'm sitting with lately is the beauty of my wife coming into her voice.
mm,
And she resonates with this story of also losing her voice with a father that had a strong voice. And to notice how our children remember their safety and belonging when the women are singing, when the women are praying,
yes.
and this humility of the gentlemen that have been doing their work to know that there's nothing left to prove, but to drop in and
Yes.
to be with what is and to hold space.
Yes.
In the birthing process of those two most beautiful ceremonies of my life, my two children, which were both at home, um, as men were just astounded at the heart of what it takes to bring
Yeah.
life here.
Yeah.
Like the women are truly the strong ones.
Yeah.
And, water puts out the fire. And so there's a great fear from most men of the power that you hold as women.
Mm,
And I think naturally we have wanted to control this power because
yes.
we're afraid of it.
Yes.
And yet we're all feminine by nature. We're all masculine by nature. And
Yes.
this is one of the gifts of breath is that it unifies these two forces of dark and
Yeah.
light,
Yeah.
above and below, male and female. And we find that unification, that center of belonging within ourselves to be here
Yeah.
and present.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that this is a time of prophecy in a way that reminds us that the time of the lone wolf is over. There was a
Yes.
time where we could, be hermits and escape. And of course, there's time for deep rest, like the deer, finds a quiet place to graze to digest what it's gathered.
Yeah.
And yet, this is a gathering place. This is a birthing place, and it's together now that we're creating a
Yes.
new world. And
Yes.
so the circle of life is really important. And as we live now in village with more than 20 people
Oh, wow.
on a
Beautiful.
small piece of land, there's consistent counsel, so everyone is heard. And we encourage everyone's unique gifts and talents and bringing the children, into the sweat lodge, bringing
Yes.
the children's play and that the children are at the center of the fire because all of our decisions are for them, for
Yes.
those 7 generations to come, and to see how our actions and the ways that we hold space for one another is so important in
Yeah.
establishing this safety and a wild crazy freedom, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
To bring forth liberation
Yeah.
and this home that we call, this new life.
Yeah.
One of the most beautiful prayers I received in my life was on our wedding day from my Lakota brother Wolf, who did a traditional making of relation ceremony for my wife and I with our parents present and
my community in Mexico, and his prayer that he shared in that ceremony was that I pray that you see each other with new eyes every day.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's not an easy thing
yeah,
to do
yeah,
because we carry so much history with one another. And yet my wife and I have been able to remind each other that we know each other so deeply and intimately, more than anyone on this planet. And so there's a safety that we have with one another that's incomparable
yeah,
with anything else that we share space with.
yeah,
And I've been noticing this nature of coming down to the ground of the level of the children to
yes,
hold space for what they're bringing through because they're more awake than we are.
yeah,
They come through with more gifts, and
correct.
there's an up leveling in all of the circles that we continue to experience in breathwave training. There's a new level of maturity every year,
Yes,
and the
yes.
quality of what's happening is just magnificent.
Well, that's why I
It's
asked the
wonderful.
question, because through the evolution, even though I was with you 4 years ago, or however long it was, we're experiencing time in a completely different way. We're experiencing a month and a week, 4 years and a year and these kind of things. So I can only imagine what you're experiencing with the group of people that are coming. And it's so fascinating. You mentioned, you know, masculines wanting to control that feminine energy because of its power. And it was this year it was a plant medicine ceremony in South Africa when I was there. And it was the most feminine space I had held because I could feel that I was capable of holding that space. And it was so profound, the difference between that ceremonial style and my more masculine, rigid, rule-based in order to bring safety. Whereas this group, I was able to open that feminine energy more and hold it in a far looser dynamic, but was still grounded in kind of the law of structure that the masculine energy brought. And it blew my mind as to why it took me so long to hold the space in such a feminine nature. And of course, it blew my mind, but I also understood that I needed to work on anchoring in that feminine energy for myself as well. So really, really beautiful and powerful statements. And
Yeah,
the
it
yeah,
takes courage, for that masculine part of ourselves to charge into and to dive deeply, and yet it's the feminine quality in us, that feels. And so I just want to point out in the breathing pattern that the masculine nature in all of us wants to control our emotions.
mm,
Yeah. And so
yeah,
this is my fascination of the breath of just meeting people where they're at and noticing the quality of this optimal flow of energy
yes,
because it's electromagnetic. Our breath, when it connects without a pause, it creates an electromagnetic circuit.
yeah,
And this, yes, can create a heightened state of awareness. It can create an altered state of consciousness, but it's also very centering. And so to find that rhythmic nature of opening, choosing new life, and softening and letting go in each and every breath is a balance,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And I think as well, the ceremonial aspect of the breath brings in the Trinity. So we've mentioned masculine, feminine, we've mentioned electric and magnetic. And in ceremonial space, where the difference comes in, we're connecting to God's source as well. So that instead of having a binary system moving through us energetically, we're connected to the Trinity and we bring in the Holy Child, right? Or the
Yeah.
angelic child, which is why I love ceremony and why this is such a sacred practice. For me, I'm really only doing breath ceremonies when I feel like it, when I'm energetically balanced, clear in my energy field. It's not a workshop that I'm doing every month. And I really like this style of listening to my body and providing or opening the container when the energetics are strong within me and my channel is clear, and I've been doing my own personal daily practice and grid work and all of these things, instead of chasing this kind of business model. It's a sacred, sacred, sacred event, and that's really shifted in my space, which I've loved.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to share with people that might be new to breath work that, again, we can simplify, and you can have a breath ceremony in one breath. Like when I
Yeah.
pick up a drum, I offer my breath to it. When I go to harvest cedar from the tree, I don't just take from the plant, because that
Yes.
can ripple trauma into the roots of the tree, which ripples into the land. Or if
Yeah.
I'm using that cedar in ceremony, that might bring trauma into that ceremonial space. So to have that moment of breath, and the natives, one of the native languages here say halakesla, I offer you my breath.
Yes.
It's an offering of, like, here's my spirit, and I honor your spirit.
Yes.
Now we're in right relationship.
Yes.
And so we can have this conscious, calming relationship with ourselves in just a few minutes. And it's
Yes.
so incredibly beneficial to self-regulate. And we
Yeah.
all know what we do when we have, a hard day's work, and we come home and we land at home into that belonging. We throw our keys in the counter, and it's like, that letting go, right?
Yeah, it's like a kind of like a slow fart.
Uh,
I thought I'd be a bit fun.
yeah. And that innate quality in us, that we know the gift of our breath, yet it's so unconscious because we don't have to be conscious of our breathing. It's the only function that we have that's both conscious and unconscious. And so
Mm,
therefore it's a bridge between the conscious and the subconscious.
yeah.
And as we circulate our breath continuously for more than a few minutes, we start to access some of the memory
Yeah.
of the subconscious, and we start to peel and
Yeah.
clear the information. It's
Mm,
like speeding up the CPU of our inner
yes.
computer,
Yeah.
because we are a biocomputer. We're the most advanced biocomputer.
Yeah.
And as we speed up in this way by raising our vibrational frequency, but slowing down the brain's speed, we
Mm,
start to create this openness of wholeness that processes more information,
yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
yet we're so readily immersed with things that um, give us avoidance, ways to distract ourselves from,
Yeah.
what we're feeling.
Yeah. Hyperregulation, hyperregulation, hyper, just swinging
Right.
back and forth. Yeah. You mentioned PTSD somewhere there, and and trauma. I wanted to ask maybe quite a provocative question, but I feel important, and I feel that it's going to be a subject matter that returns into our space. And that is, what was your experience or any comments, an inquiry around those souls that have had, sorry, I just want to be cautious with my words here. Give me a second. Yeah, those souls that have had certain kind of biochemical weaponry in their systems, through the shots, and how we know that that affected the immune system, the heart, in such deep ways, and how breath works with that, or what has your experience been with that? Because I do believe we're coming into another cycle of this agenda. And I think it would be important to kind of look at these shadow aspects a little bit from your wealth of knowledge.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. I want to be very mindful and not wronging anyone's decisions.
Yes.
And we have all experienced trauma as part of our human nature. And the beauty of working with our divine proportion, the intelligence and innate qualities of becoming the nature of things with the breath naturally integrates and can remove permanently some of these imprints of the programs that have been installed in our software, including these things. And for those that have realized that they maybe made a wrong choice or just naturally by default find themselves in a system that they can't get out of, how can you come home to this belonging again, right? With the simplicity of the technology that you already are.
Yes.
And this, again, simplicity of really returning to who we are and what we have within us is the exploration.
And the empowerment.
Because we've been disempowered to believe that there's something outside of us, right from the church. You know, that we learn to pray in a way that's asking for something outside of us to help us because we're weak, and yet there's an empowering nature when we remember that we are that creative force that governs life. And those are the steps of awakening, I believe. Like when The Secret came out, for example, the main luminaries that were brought into that realized after the film that there was a very deep financial intention in that film, and they removed themselves because there's an awareness that we can work with or manipulate the laws of attraction. And then we humble ourselves to realize that this power is working through us. And then ultimately we come around full circle to realize that we are this power of the creative force that most of us call God. And so everyone has what it takes to move through what we've been given. And my experience when people come up against this existential fear of like, I'm not sure if I can hold space for what's going to be unleashed if I really drop into how heavy I feel, is that it doesn't all move at once.
Correct.
Yeah.
And never in the way you expect it to. Yeah.
Right. And it's like opening an onion, and there's layers after layers, and the most potent and hardest teachings are the ones that stay with us as our medicine.
Correct.
As our gems and our gifts and our talents, and we're polishing, right? The reasons why we're here, and each of us are brought here, I believe, with a mission and a purpose. And it's also just simply to enjoy and live life. There's this beautiful share from a gentleman who has been really challenged with some diagnosis of some mental instability, and come home to being able to manage that because he didn't have an upbringing where the space holders around him could see him for who he was. And that's a common story for those that come in with special gifts. And they're medicated, they're told that they're different or they're strange and they're not supposed to be doing certain things, and they're basically exiled, from a family, or they become orphans, or they become hospitalized. And for an individual like this to come home, even for, a gentleman who's been in war, to
Yes.
actually come home to this descending grace of love that we are, to open the heart again and
Yeah.
to feel some of that pain and heaviness of what we've witnessed.
And to
Not just
complete the story, I think you've mentioned that before,
uh,
the rest and relaxation aspect of this feminine style breath brings us to safety, brings us into the body, and allows us to complete the story.
uh,
And that's the healing. And I
uh,
really love that. Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I want to speak to this masculine nature of, working with the type A super achiever types that really good at business and getting things done, and they come to a practice like the breath and they want to work really hard and they get a lot of energy moving really quickly. It's ultimately gentleness and softness that can crack the hardest shells, I like to say.
Yeah.
And when they really start to soften and self-regulate and allow themselves to feel,
Yeah.
that's when the emotions start to move. And that's
Yeah.
when significant healing and change can happen in their life, where
Yeah.
they can listen more, they can hold space more,
Yeah.
and be guided by the feminine voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of an experience I had with a client where um, he was in South Africa, but he needed to fly. So again, I usually do the breath work first and then the medicine work. And I didn't want him to be in a kind of controlled airport environment straight after a big psychedelic experience. So we did the mushrooms first and ended with a integrative breath experience, just swapped it around. And in his mind, his mental body, the human behavior dictated that he'd had his big shamanic experience. The big show had occurred, and I usually book them for 2 nights or 3 nights, whatever it was. And he was like, "I think I'm going to go home after the breath," and I knew he wouldn't, but I just allowed him to think so and said, "Sure, go for it. Just remember, I have organized dinner for you, beautiful dinner." "Oh yeah, no, I might miss it." I said, "Okay, cool." And we began the breath, and this man was tall, a big, big, big guy. And he was just sobbing in my arms at the end of the breath. And he was so shocked. And he was like, "I can't go home now." I was like, "I know." I said, "Come and have some dinner," and he said, "You do know what you're doing." I'm like, "Yes, just relax now," and he just was in such shock at the release that he had in the breath work. Again, the psychedelics are incredible. They're fascinating. They push you. They're shadow work that, there's many things, but um, I think a lot of it is out there. It's out there, and the breath just brings it home. So it just reminded me of that when you were chatting. Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, really reminding us that it's our relationships that teach us what we need to see through the reflections of what we're being shown, and especially our deepest relationships.
mm,
There's this awareness that we travel with the same souls, the closest people in our lives. We
mm,
travel with them over and over,
mm,
and we choose our parents to live out our karma
yeah,
and to show us some the hardest things to look at.
yeah.
And becoming a father has been the most humbling and deepest initiation
I can
of
imagine.
noticing that there was still a lot of things that I needed to look at, because I did want to offer and choose to offer that this safe space,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And yet to be able to accept my humanness
yeah,
where I fall short.
yeah.
And there's times that we do get frustrated because children know how to push your buttons.
Yeah.
They they find the way, and they'll touch you and test
Oh,
you
Robin.
to your
Yeah.
breaking point,
Yeah.
right? And it takes a willingness to see beyond our own story and
Yeah.
suffering and stress, because when we're in a stress response, we're in survival. And so we're either in
Correct.
defense, we're either running, or we're pushing away.
Yeah.
And so to be able to come down onto their level and to self-regulate myself, that's the way I put them to sleep at night.
Mm.
You know, there's a saying that children have more to do at bedtime than any other time of day, because there's like, no, we're not going to bed. We're going to start running around the house and jumping
Yeah.
off the walls and jumping on the couches and all the things, you know? And so we've learned to be dynamic and playful
Yes.
and encouraging that expression of
Yes.
them also integrating their emotional experience, because they're
Yes.
doing the work for us as well.
Yes.
And then once we finally get to lay down, as soon as I regulate my nervous system, they fall asleep.
Yeah. And it's so powerful that you've mentioned that, because, from my perspective, I would recognize you as an elder and somewhat of a master, as, someone that has taken time to work on himself. And you have taught breathwork to thousands of people. And here you are speaking to the very, very human dynamic of being triggered by your kids with the knowledge that you have. And so we now kind of zoom out and paint a picture of those people, our brothers and sisters on this planet, that are filled with cortisol levels and just excessive amounts of stress, PTSD, and who do not have the tools and are still parents and trying to do the parenting thing. And so I think there's just such a humility in what you've just said, and so beautiful and powerful, of one, how we can learn from kids, and two, the tools that we need as a human race to come into the body and reconnect, and calm down the nervous system, and open the heart and become playful and work with the energetics, because it's all energy, right? So yeah, I really love that.
Yeah, being humble enough to forgive ourselves, because when we show ourselves that softness of
Yeah,
forgiveness, it shows the children that they too, are okay with not being okay
correct.
when things get stirred up.
Yeah.
And we have on our particular land here, next to our neighbors that have more adults, we have more children on our side of this property with just 3 families here.
Mm,
And so the kids play out their dynamics, and they mostly get along really well, but they're also, having their
interpersonal
idiosyncrasies.
entanglement, yeah.
Yeah. And so to hold space for that without making them wrong, and just checking in, what are you feeling?
Yes,
And giving them options as opposed to just making it a no.
correct.
And
Yeah.
yeah, we're learning a lot. It's like I'm learning more, being a father, and my kids are only 6 and 3.
Yeah.
We're just getting started, and recently I asked Lord for support for when they become teenagers.
Oh, Robin. They're going to be great. They're going to be so great.
And I think, again, fundamentally just teaching them the importance of human connection, and being able to share, and
Yeah.
to be generous, and to share space, and to share toys and all the things.
Yes.
They're learning such deep human dynamics, and And this again is the answer to the prophecy of coming together to celebrate.
I was going
And
to say they're sharing within the blueprints of unity consciousness and Christ consciousness, which is, beautiful. And you mentioned the teenage years. I guess it's like this rite of passage for them, and as well as for you. I mean, having deep connections with the Lakota and your upbringing with the land and the native people. Can you speak to rites of passage and possibly bring in the theme of children or teenagers? Because I think this is where we start to really shift things.
thank you. Yeah, my dear First Nation sister, who's Cree and European, she teaches our level 3 ceremonial path training with us, and it's really important to have her native voice as a woman in the space. And she shared an experience with me with her son coming into becoming a teenager, where we offered him a very simple but very potent rite of passage, where we brought him out onto the ice on the lake that we were living on, laid some cedar down, and had him stand there while we acknowledged him coming into his manhood. And
Beautiful.
I gifted him his flute, and we played him the drum and sang him a song, and just invited him to welcome that new age of
Yeah.
stepping into his maturity. And so, rites of passage can be very simple, but we've lost the power of ritual in most of our,
Mm,
cultural living.
mm,
And yet they're coming around again, and that's
yes.
how breath can be such a simple ritual that brings us into harmony. And,
Mm,
ceremony really is about harmony.
mm,
And,
mm.
you spoke to the word quote unquote master, and I'm not crazy about that word in regards to breath. There's a certain expertise that
Mm,
I've developed for sure, but I believe that we cannot master the breath. And so I call myself masterless. And yet there's a mastery program that is the workshop of our life, right?
yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
and to
And the embodiment,
acknowledge
yeah, the embodiment process. That's it. Yeah.
the young ones in their rites of passage. Like my daughter, as she turns 7, wants to get her ears pierced, and that's a rite of passage.
Yes.
And so we want to go about that in a ceremonial way, where we circle up as a family, or maybe some friends of hers joining her and holding
That's
space
so
while
sweet.
she goes through that experience, right? Because there's some fear of stepping into that, having your ears pierced.
Yeah.
And in some cultures, like in Bali, the women's ears are pierced right away.
Yeah.
And so when we had our daughter there when she was 1, they thought she was a boy because she didn't have her ears pierced.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's so many different common threads of different cultures around the world of how there's very similar things that are done in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these rites of passage are a beautiful thing to look up to our elders for,
Mm,
and to learn these ways of sitting in a sweat lodge for 4 rounds, or sitting on
mm,
a vision quest for 4 days and 4 nights
mm.
without food and water, and offering our prayers up for the people, learning to offer ourselves up
Yeah.
to life, and to find a vision, to find our gift,
Yeah.
to cry in the night.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these rites of passage and ways of ritual are now deeply embedded, in the people that have been learning from the elders, and also sharing them more
Mm,
openly with
mm.
with the Rainbow Tribe, and not just the indigenous. Because one
Yes.
of the things my sister Shonina reminds us is that we all are indigenous to this earth.
Exactly. And this is why I bring up the DNA. We all hold the genetic sequence of the one, you know. And while you were speaking, it reminded me of the spiral of life and time, time cycles, time spirals, where we had ritual, we lost ritual, we come back to ritual. And then I'm kind of moving through a phase where ritual is becoming something different. So through the embodiment process, it's like it no longer needs to be ritual because it just is. It's a being, it's already anchored. So while you were speaking, I was reminded of this spiral and how beautiful, and this is our life experience. This is our human experience to move through these rites of passage in different ways for different reasons, and to learn different lessons. And it's so interesting because I think also, we spoke we spoke a little bit about the seeking of those peak experiences. So people, for example, say going to 20 ayahuasca ceremonies in the space of 2 years. Now that's abuse of ritual, so it's like these time cycles that we move through where we really sit in deep reflection, and contemplating with regards to our objectives, why we're doing things. Yeah.
Yeah, and bringing home our life is ceremony, because any plant
Correct.
medicine deep ceremony only answers half of our prayer. We have to do the other half
Yes.
of the inner work and the daily, dishes and the
Yeah.
laundry and the joy that
Correct.
we bring to all the things to take care of all of the details and the pressures. And we can be so wrapped up in the game of survival of how imbalanced the system of economy is now, and how deeply the governments have their hand in our back pocket, that it's hard for people to get ahead and feel like they're not pressured, to make ends meet while they are bringing their best.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I've seen as a cultural shock coming back home to Canada after 23 years in Mexico, because in Mexico, people have very little and they're very happy with what they
Yes.
have,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
there's also an imbalance in that culture of, the lower class and the upper class. There's not much of an in between.
Yeah.
Maybe the expats, as we say, or those people that are living from the north that come down to Mexico, bring that middle way more than anyone. But you see that nature of also the wealthier people now noticing that they can be more generous with their abundance,
Yes. Yes.
which has a lot to do with our out breath, our letting go of our
Yes.
attachments to more accumulation
Yeah.
of the material things in our lives. And also for those that are maybe lacking or have that program of less than, to receive more,
Correct. Yeah.
to enliven the in-breath
Yeah.
and to relax that out breath. And there's always this reciprocal exchange.
Yeah.
And so I always love to bring certain patterns like this of how we're living, as a culture, as a world, home to us taking a deep breath together, and what that looks like for each individual, and how we meet ourselves, how we meet life as it's moving through us.
Yeah. 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 Well, I think, looking at the time, I want to close because I feel like that kind of last conversation there kind of sums it up, Um, and I'll just make one comment. You spoke about the exhale being the let go and the inhale receiving. I'm living, this is my third cycle of living nomadically now, and my objective is and was and still is not to pay rent on the planet that I live on. So I've been manifesting these people that have been opening up to me, which for me, as predominantly masculine based in my prior years, has been a very difficult or very interesting process for me to receive and to speak my truth of where I'm at, and that I'm walking the path of Christ consciousness in absolute sovereignty and freedom. I still have work, I still have an income, I still have purpose, deep purpose. But should they wish to participate in this flow of breath with me, the inhale and the exhale, is that an experience that their consciousness would wish to play with me? And so this is how I'm living at the moment, and it's been exceptionally fascinating, profoundly enhancing, and super expanding for my consciousness as well, and deeply humbling.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you. I
yeah,
just want to bring home, this awareness and this prayer of noticing, deeply inquiring into what our why is. And I want to
yes,
honor you for living that why in you, because it's not about the income, it's about the outcome. And
yeah,
because of the ripple of your life and your service
mm,
to the people,
yeah.
and you walk your talk. And yeah, I really want to honor you
Thank you,
for
Robin.
breathing the medicine, for following your heart's call to be in a good way in your sovereignty. And
Thank you.
just by your existence, just by your presence and your radiance and that smile, you affect others'
Yeah,
lives in significant ways through the ways that you live. And so I invite us all to tune in and inquire into what is the most important thing for me? What's the most important
yeah,
quality
yeah,
that I'm here to live and feel? What do I want to feel more of right now?
yeah,
And and choose that. And choose
yeah,
that for myself.
yeah. Thank you so much, Robin. I think we'll end how we began, and just in a bit of silence. Such deep reverence and honor to you, Robin. Thank you
Mm.
for the gift of breath, and thank you for always standing by your why as well. I honor you, I love you, and thank you for being on the show. Sha,
Thank you, sister.
please stop this
Okay.
recording. I don't even know how this stops. Oh, stop live stream.